And welcome to the SJ Childs Show. I'm your host, SJ Childs, and today I have a very exciting special guest, Anthony Ianni. Did I say that right? I just asked you and then I had to double check.
Oh, you were right on the money, so you're good. You're good.
Absolutely. I love that. Thank you so much for being here today. I'm really looking forward to this conversation and to really giving people a great understanding of what autism and success look like in the same picture. And so let's just kind of dive right in, and please introduce yourself and let us know, why you're here and what we're going to be discussing.
Well, first of all, my name is Anthony Ianni. I'm a national motivational speaker, soon-to-be author, and autism advocate. For those of you listening and watching that don't know my background, when I was 4 years old, I was diagnosed with pervasive developmental disorder. And at 5 years old, a group of doctors and professionals told my parents that because I have autism, that I would barely succeed or achieve anything in life. They told my parents that because I have autism, I would barely graduate from high school, never go to college, never be an athlete, and I would likely end up in a group institution with other autistic individuals like myself for the rest of my life. I wasn't told this story to my freshman year of high school, and so that kind of became my motivation to go out and prove those people and any other doubters and naysayers that had my life wrong. I had to work hard at everything from basketball to my social life and especially school, because I'm not afraid to admit this. I was not the smartest kid that went to my high school, but I had a lot of support from teachers who helped me get through all the tough days and challenges in elementary, middle school, and high school. Had a lot of support from really close friends of mine that I'm still close with to this day. Teammates, coaches, and more importantly, my family. So I graduated from Okemos High School, which is in Okemos, Michigan, in 2007, where I then went on to Grand Valley State University for 2 years on a full ride scholarship for basketball. Didn't quite work out for me there, so I decided to leave Grand Valley State to fulfill my lifelong dream, which was to play for a certain coach at a certain university, which was Coach Tom Izzo in the Michigan State Spartans, where I was a walk-on for 2 years. My senior year, Coach Izzo awarded me a full ride scholarship. I was part of two Big Ten championship teams, a team that won a Big Ten tournament title, a team that went to a Final Four, got to play with an outstanding group of individuals who, to this day, I'm proud to call all those guys my brothers. But during my time at Michigan State, I was able to achieve two things I'm very, very proud of. The first one is I became the NCAA's first Division I college basketball player with autism in history.
Woohoo! Congratulations. I love that.
Thank you. So that's a title that I hold near and dear to my heart. But the next title was, graduating and getting my bachelor's degree in sociology from Michigan State, which was something that a lot of people thought would never be done. But because I had a great support system from not only my family, but from everybody in the Okemos public school system to the Learning Disability Center at Grand Valley State, even though I was there for 2 years, my academic coordinators, Dr. Damon Arnold at Grand Valley, Elliot Daniels at Michigan State, and the Resource Center for Persons with Disability, also known as RCPD at Michigan State, were the big reasons why I was able to graduate. And so without those resources, I wouldn't be where I'm at today. And here I am.
That's incredible. I love that.
Thank you.
It sounds like I need to move to Michigan, to tell you the truth.
Don't come here in the wintertime.
Excuse me.
Don't come here in the wintertime.
Well, I live in Utah, so I get that, right? Yeah, both of us are in the frozen states.
Oh yeah, you get it.
Oh, that is so amazing. I just absolutely love that. And there's so many topics that I want to touch on with you about your life, and to just really show that just because you are diagnosed with autism at the age of 4, at the age of whatever, it doesn't mean that your life can't be successful, and that you define your success in your own way. It's not somebody else's idea of what success can be for you. And I'm so happy that your family supported you, and that you like you said, prove those doctors and those people wrong, those naysayers, because that's something that has happened in our family as well. Just those limits that people have tried to put on to certain people. And I tell them, no, you don't have, those aren't true. Those are just someone's opinion of the only experience that they know. And people can only give opinions and experience from experiences they've only had. And if they have limited experiences and limited, flexibility and thinking, then it's not going to be right for you if you're an open-minded thinker. So I like that.
And
What?
another thing too, that I tell people all the time, and you had already mentioned it, is, autism doesn't define me. You
Yeah.
know, I define myself. You
Yeah.
know, and I think that's the one thing I've told. That's the one thing I've told other advocates, other individuals who or self advocates, other individuals on the spectrum, is that autism does not define who you are and what you do.
Yeah.
You define who you are. You define what you do. Having autism is just part of who you are. It's a blessing to have that. And
Yeah,
I tell people all
definitely.
the time that, I'm proud to be on the spectrum. I'm proud to have it. And I've had a lot of individuals on the spectrum, especially the young ones, look at me and go, wait, you serious? Like, why would you be proud of something like this? And I said, because without autism, I'm not talking to you today. Without autism, I'm not making my own history and rewriting my own
Yeah.
history from time to time. And I said,
Love
that's
that.
why I'm proud of it. And it puts me in a unique community that
Hmm.
not a lot of people get to be a part of. And I think that's the number one reason why I'm so proud to be on that spectrum, is because I get to be a part of a community of over 3.5 million people in our country who
Yeah.
have, an autism diagnosis just like I do.
Yeah. I love that. And as I told you before, I am so honored and blessed that I have a family of also all autistic individuals. And so it's such a unique and beautiful experience. And yes, we have challenges. Like, we're not sugarcoating it. We're not throwing glitter over it and making it look pretty and saying, oh, we're so happy. Like, yes, it comes with challenges, but doesn't everyday life come with challenges? Like, you just, everything does, and everything we do. Being an athlete in itself comes with its own challenges and your own, keeping up on your health and your mental well-being and all of those things, working as a team. Tell us about the struggles of, like, what type of communication struggles or defined the PDD NOS. My son also had that diagnosis early on.
So for me, it's always been the language aspect of it, and change as well. Like, if you were to tell me that, okay, we're gonna move from this house to the house down the street, but you just tell me about it now and it happens the next day, then I flip out. Because it's
Yeah.
like, well, why didn't you tell me this like a month earlier, or why didn't you tell me this a week before? Then I could have been more prepared. For example, there were times in Michigan State where, um, I would get a text from one of our assistant coaches saying, "Hey, we got to watch film and do free throws at 8:30 tonight. So you need to be back at the Breslin Center or the basketball offices by 8:30." And my wife, girlfriend at the time, would come to visit me, Thursday and Saturday, because she was in Detroit at the time and I was in East Lansing. So it was about an hour drive for her to make. And so, whenever she would come into town and then I get that text message from my coach, I would get so upset, because it's like,
Yeah.
I had all this stuff planned out with you. We were going to go to dinner, go to a movie, and like, what am I supposed to do? And I would get frustrated and upset.
Yeah.
Um, but luckily, I've always had somebody like her in my corner that said to me, "Hey, go do your thing. I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah.
We'll order takeout or something. We'll
Love
watch
that.
the movie. Like, it's not a big deal." But the language aspect of it, especially, has always been my worst. So idioms. If you had told the 5-year-old me, "Hey, it's raining cats and dogs outside," a majority of your listeners, listening or watching to this, know that raining cats and dogs outside means it's raining really hard. It's pouring down rain. You had told the 5-year-old me that right here and now, I would have ran out my front door of my house and then hoping and praying that a cat or dog would actually fall into my hands,
Yeah.
come from the sky. One of my other favorites is, so my first grade teacher. So when I was in first grade, we were having such a good day in class. Everybody was having a great day. Nobody was in trouble. And my teacher was just so excited. She stood up, started walking around, just smile on her face. And then she goes, "Class, I'm so proud of you guys. We've had such a great day today. Like, I'm just living on cloud nine today." And so what did I do? I got up out of my desk. I went over to the nearest window, opened it, popped my head out of that window, kind of looked up in the clouds saying, "Where's cloud nine?" I come back to my teacher and I said, "Her teacher was cloud nine. How do we get there?" And then she told me what it meant. Cloud nine means you're feeling good, like life is good, you're just in a really good mood.
Yeah.
So idioms were my worst. Jokes and sarcasm to this day are still my weakest link. Still. I mean, my wife is sarcastic with me all the time. And I can't tell at times whether she's actually joking or actually being serious. And if she is joking and I can't tell, like, she'll just say to me, "Hey, babe, I'm
Just
kidding."
kidding. Yeah.
Hashtag sarcasm. Like, it's okay. But the tough part for me being on a team was, especially at Michigan State, was there were guys on my team that at Michigan State that were the kings of sarcasm. And number one on that list was Draymond Green, who plays for the Golden State Warriors. And Draymond and I, we knew each other a little bit in high school, played at travel ball AAU together for about a month. And then I went to a different team. But then when I got to Michigan State, I always known that Draymond, would joke with guys, be sarcastic with people. And when it came to be joking and being sarcastic with me, like there were so many times I could not tell. But then luckily for me, I had a couple teammates I can lean on to and say, hey, was he joking? Was he being serious? It was like, oh no, he was just kidding. Like, don't worry about it. Just continue to be you. So those times were tough. But when my teammates actually got to know me a little bit more and understood me after that, like I wasn't afraid to just lean on somebody and say, hey, what did he actually mean by this? Was he joking? Was he serious? Yeah, he was serious. We got to be back here at 8:00 tonight, shoot free throw. So the language aspect has always been a big struggle for me. Nouns and verbs, like, again, a big struggle for me. But again, this is where my resource, the resources came into play in Oklahoma's public schools. I would have speech therapist. I would have a speech therapist twice a week from kindergarten until about my junior year of high school.
Wow.
Just being in those sessions twice a week. Did I hate it as a little kid? Absolutely. I remember like she would come to the classroom. So it was Mrs. Steinbart, my first, Mrs. Steinbart, and then Mrs. Miller. So they would come and get me, and then I would go hide in the corner of the classroom because I did not want anybody to see me. I did not want to leave that classroom because I was just enjoying myself. I didn't want to go to speech. But, what my speech teacher did was she knew my family background. So my family background, my dad played baseball at Michigan State. My mom was a 3-sport All-American in college. She plays softball, basketball, volleyball. She still holds 9 records at Adrian College for basketball.
Wow.
School's all-time leading scorer in both men and women's basketball. Has her jersey retired, so she's pretty big time.
That's cool.
So my speech teacher knew about all this. So what she did with me was we would play board games, competitive board games, whether it be Mousetrap, Candyland, Chutes and Ladders, Trouble, Monopoly, like you name it, we played the game. So, but here was the catch. I could not, so if I roll the dice and I get 6, for example, I cannot move up 6 spaces until I get the right noun, verb, or idiom question right.
Ooh.
Begin to describe and tell you how many times I threw a fit because I lost in a game of Candyland. So, but looking back on it, it helped me because I knew like, okay, I learned like, this is what I messed up on. This is what the word sounds like. Is it a noun? Is it a verb? You learn from it and then you get the next one. Then when I got to middle school and high school after that, it was more worksheets than ever. So, but what my speech therapist did for me was unbelievable. And it started to help me a little bit more with the nouns, the verbs, the idioms. Because once I got into high school, like, if I was going to school in the morning at Okemos High School, whether it be freshman, sophomore, junior, senior year, and it was just, oh, you're fine. And just downpouring rain in the morning, I would wake up and go, oh, it's raining cats and dogs today. So because I understood what it meant.
Yeah.
And that was a testament to my speech teachers, even all my teachers in Okemos Public Schools, because whatever plans that were in my individualized education plan, also known as an IEP, whatever was on those papers, whatever was in those plans, they stuck to it. And if something didn't work, they tried something else. So a lot of the language aspect, a lot of joking and sarcasm. Are there times where I get really stressed out, high anxiety? Of course. But I've been able to develop coping mechanisms for myself. So when it was high school and college, it was basketball for me. So if I was really stressed out, had a lot of anxiety, had a lot going on, running, when the wheels started to turn in my head and I can't stop, I would just grab my mom's car keys, say, Mom, I'm going to the high school. I'll be back in a couple hours. And all I would do is just shoot. Just shoot free throws, shoot jump shots, work on my post game, work on my dribbling moves, like whatever. And I would just do that for 2 hours because that was my safe place. Mm-hmm. That was my happy place to get away from the world. There was no autism in my happy place. There was no, high school or college gossip. There was no stress and anxiety. It was just me, a ball, and a basket in a court in a gym.
Like
That's
it.
all it was. And so even though I don't have basketball anymore today, some of my coping mechanisms I have now are I go for a 4.5 mile walk in my neighborhood. I'll go to our local rec center and lift weights because if I'm feeling angry, I'll just throw weights around. Or I'll just grab a basketball while I'm at the rec center and just go shoot for an hour, because I kind of go back to my old ways again, which
Yeah.
like for example, last week I had a really stressful week last week. So what did I do? I went to the rec center after a Zoom meeting. I went and worked out. Nobody was using the basketball courts. I grabbed a ball. I went in the gym and I was in there for an hour and a half. And I walked out there and I said, man, it's like the old days again.
Yeah.
So I've been able to learn to develop, certain ways to help me cope with a lot of things. And the one thing I've always told folks is whatever coping mechanism, whatever happy place you have, use it to the fullest of its ability. If even it's just one coping mechanism, if it's just listening to music, if that's all it
Yeah.
is, then use it to the fullest of your ability, because whatever that coping mechanism is, it's going to help you just relax, get away from the world, and not even think about what's in front of you.
Yeah, I love that. That's wonderful advice for everyone, actually, right?
Absolutely.
Because it's really a testament to how much support and just belief that people
Yeah.
had in you. And it's so important to give that to our youth, to put that belief in them, and no matter what their ability is, to believe in them, and just to believe that you can help them become their best version of themselves, and
Right.
put them on the right paths and things. And I think that sports is such a great way for kids to do that. Yeah, that's really fantastic. And I love how much support your community and your school gave you, because we haven't received that type of support here, unfortunately. And so it's put a lot back onto me, which is fine. Like I love to teach my kids, be with my kids, and really learn from them.
For
Right?
sure.
They're
For sure.
teaching me how to be an adult and a mom and everything like that. So that's interesting. What are you doing now? What are some projects or some things that you're doing right now in your life?
Oh, a lot of things. Where do I even start?
I know, right? It's a loaded question. It's like I always have 12 projects on the back burner.
So right now, as I mentioned earlier, I'm a national motivational speaker. I currently work for the Michigan Department of Civil Rights, one of our government departments here, and I head up the anti-bullying initiative called the
Oh, I
Relentless
love
Tour.
that.
So the Relentless Tour was actually an anti-bullying initiative I started on my own with another nonprofit organization in Detroit, and I launched. So my career actually started almost 9 years ago in 2012. And then I launched the Relentless Tour in 2013. And so the Relentless Tour has been going on for over 7 years now. And in the last 4 years, I've spoken to over 400,000 individuals, and I've been to over 450 plus, no, but not 450,000 events, 450 plus events,
Yeah.
schools, universities. And so I was hired by Civil Rights in 2015 because they were looking for an anti-bullying initiative at the time. And they saw the success I was having. The initiative is actually the first ever grassroots anti-bullying initiative of its kind.
So cool.
So nobody else has done it. And then once I was hired, my old boss, who's retired, Matt Weesaw, the first day I walk in his office, I sit down, we go over a few things. And then he says to me, all right, it's all yours. I'm like, what do you mean? He said, the Relentless Tour. This is your baby. You created it. You run with it. You go have as much success with it as you want. You go out of state with it, but just, make sure I get clearance on things before you go out and do stuff. And so I was like, yeah, no problem. So it took a full year and a half from when I launched it, and then it became a national deal.
Yeah.
So I've been doing that for the last 5 years, 6 years now with civil rights. That's one project I do. So I'm going to continue to do that for as long as there's an anti-bullying message that's needed, not just in my state, but around the country.
Yeah.
I officially launch the release of my book this upcoming September, on September 7th. My new book titled Centered. Apologize, you hear my son.
It's okay. It's great.
So my book is titled Centered: Autism, Basketball, and One Athlete's Dream comes out September 7th. And then my co-author and I, we are currently working on our second project. So I don't want to give too much away, but what we're doing is we are interviewing all athletes on the spectrum.
I love that.
So what we're doing is we're interviewing athletes who are on the spectrum, whether they are current, past, etc. And we want to get to know their experiences, what they loved about the sport, what they didn't like about it, their experiences as an athlete being on the spectrum. And then we also interview their parents. We interview
Oh,
their
that's cool.
coaches to kind of get, their background and their experiences on everything.
Yeah.
Um, and one of the coaches we interviewed, the feedback we got was, I wish I would have had something like this, when I was coaching so and so.
Yeah.
And so this is kind of like, our second project is going to be, I don't want to say like a guideline, but it'll be more of a book that, is giving out advice
I
on.
love that.
And the great thing is we have found over, I think, up to close to 16, 17 different athletes. And these aren't just athletes, who are basketball players. These are athletes who are football players, who run track and field, who do karate, golf, basketball, baseball, skiing, rollerblading. Like we went, pardon the pun, we went all across the spectrum.
Yeah.
When it came to athletes in sports. And so, one of them is Armani Williams. Armani Williams is the first known NASCAR driver with autism in NASCAR history. And Armani is from the state of Michigan, so he lives right down the road from me. So,
That's great.
But yeah, that's our second project. I know my mom wants me to work on a kid's book. So right now I got, I'm going to try and work on that this summer whenever I can. I got the right character in mind. I got the right stories that I want to pitch and do. So I got that going for me.
Oh, awesome.
And just promoting, my upcoming book, which I'm very excited about. And,
Yeah.
and other than being a husband and a father, to two handsome, beautiful sons, my oldest who will finish kindergarten in 2 weeks. And
Woohoo.
my youngest, who's crazy, but I love it. That's me. So I'm a man of many different labels. And it's funny, when you talk about labels, that's what people think of autism sometimes, is a label. And I tell folks all the time, well, guess what? Like, we all have labels in life. And I mentioned I'm a motivational speaker, former college basketball player, Michigan State Spartan, author, advocate, husband, father, and I have autism. And I'm proud to say that last label every time. So I tell folks all the time, like, be proud of your labels.
Mm-hmm.
Be proud of who you are. And so yeah, like I said, I'm a man of many labels.
I love that. That's fantastic, Anthony. I'm really, really, it's a very inspiring story. And it's just an honor to have you on to share with me today. Thank you so much. And let's talk about what there's like so many. I have like 5 things. I got to keep them in order here in my head so I don't get all scatterbrained. Okay, so let's go back to you dating, like, and dating and finding your wife and kind of what that looked like. Well, tell us a little bit about that.
Obviously, middle school and high school, I had a lot of crushes. I did. I went on a few dates, but there were times where, the girls I had crushes on, they kind of knew a little bit about my background. They kind of knew that I don't want to say they knew I was on the spectrum, but they knew something was off. And of course, when I got to college, it was kind of the same deal. And then I was just so close with a lot of folks at Grand Valley State. I was close with a lot of girls who were on the soccer team, track and field, and volleyball. Because, the one thing about being about student athletes, especially at the college level, is you're really tight knit with a lot of athletes.
Yeah.
And the one thing I learned, especially being at Michigan State, is you're part of a family. And, we are the Spartans. We were part of the Spartan family. And I think that's the thing I learned during my time, is that you are really tight knit with all the other athletes, because you all go through the same thing. You may have different sports, but it's the everyday grind of workouts, class, practice, workouts, study hall, et cetera, et cetera. So we all know about it. But I was just so close with, a lot of, athletes at Grand Valley State. It was just, the friends after that. And, I'm not ready to say that I hated the friend zone. As a high school kid, I hated that. I hated that. And so, but when I got to Michigan State, I didn't, because I was telling my old roommate at Grand Valley State, who actually ended up being the best man at my wedding, my buddy Mike, I would always say to him, like, dude, like, I don't know if I'm gonna find anybody for me. Like, I'm almost gonna be 21. Like, part of me thinks I'm just not gonna find anybody. Like I'm just gonna be, plain old Anthony Ianni living my life. And he said to me, he said, dude, like you'll find somebody. Like there's that old saying, there's 1,000 fish in the sea out there. It's a
Yeah.
big, it's a big pond or big, little pond with a lot of fish out there. Like
Yeah.
you'll find somebody. And so when I was at Michigan State, my first year I transferred from Grand Valley State. I couldn't play because the NCAA had rules at the time where if you transfer, you got to sit out a year. You got a red shirt. So the only thing I could do at that time was practice and be on the bench with the team at home games. I couldn't go on the road. I couldn't travel. I couldn't even sit on the bench. I had to sit behind the bench if I was at, it sucked. And now the AA changes the rules. Like, oh, if you transfer, sure, you can play this year. And I'm like, well, where was this? Like,
Yeah.
where was this when I was transferring? But so my mom went to a salon and she came back to me and said, hey, I'm just letting you know, like I went to the salon and you should really check it out. I think you would really, benefit of being relaxed from it. And I was like, okay, not a big deal. So the first time I go, I enjoyed it. Second time I go back, I was getting my shoulders worked on and the person working on my shoulders goes, hey, I got a possible hookup for you. And I'm like, I don't know. Like, I mean, my old roommate tried to set me up, when I was at Grand Valley State on blind dates. It didn't quite work out well. I mean, it was fun, but it just didn't quite work out in the end. So I'm not really big in the blind date stuff. And she's like, no, like, let me tell you more about her. So she was telling me about this girl who was from Detroit, was a big sports fan, loved the Tigers, the Red Wings, the Pistons, the Lions, all the Detroit teams. She loved, she loves a lot of movies. She's really into, just going out and having some fun. And she's a super nice, she's a sweetheart. And I said to the woman, I go, okay, well, I like what I hear, but I want to see her. Like, I don't want to walk out of here, know about this person, then not see her. So she's like, yeah, let me make sure she's not with a client because my wife's a hairstylist. And so she's like, yeah, she's got a client, but you can wave at her. I'm like, okay, that's fine. So I walk out and I took one good look at her and I said to myself, all right, well, let's try to make something happen. Let's see what happens. And so I left my name and number on the back of one of her business cards and I left it for her. Now her side of the story is she was never going to call me because she was really shy.
Oh.
Call me because she was super shy. So I had to do all the dirty work. So luckily I had a business. I took an extra business card just in case. I looked her up on Facebook. I friended her. She accepted the request. She sent me her number. So it turned into a 2-hour text conversation to about a 3-hour conversation over the phone. So we talked for about 5 hours that night. And then before I know it, we have our first date the day after Christmas. And then we started talking a little bit more. And then after the ball dropped on New Year's Eve, about a week and a half later, we made it, Facebook official. And the rest is history. And then, so we've been together now for over 11 years. We've been married. It'll be 8 years this next month, July 13th.
Hey, that's my birthday too. Oh my gosh, all these things for you happening on famous days in my life too. That's great.
I love it.
I love it too.
And I proposed to her at in the Detroit Tigers dugout at Comerica Park because I was able to get a setup where the team was on the road. And so I had a connection at Michigan State who knew the head's grounds crew keeper there at Comerica Park. And so, because she's a big Tigers fan. So we spent the weekend in Detroit. I popped the question to her in the Tigers dugout and the rest is history. So
I love that.
So that's how me and my wife met. That's how we met.
That is such a great story. And my husband and I have been together for 17 years and married for 12. So I completely get it. Like when you find that person, it's just, that's it. It's done deal, right? Yeah.
Exactly.
And he's my best friend and I can't wait to talk to him and see him all the time. It baffles me to think that we could know each other for almost 2 decades and still have authentic conversations every day, and still have, just being in love with each other, and it's amazing. So, and I give a lot of the honor to that in him having autism and him, kind of having that honesty and that literal the logic, that I'm a little bit more emotional of a person. And he's so logical, and he's my rock. He
Mhm.
keeps everything in perspective, and it's just amazing how we can, be opposites in every way and alike in every way as well. So I love how that works out. True love, that's what we call it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's so great. I am so glad that, this is such a great story for people to hear, and so inspiring to know that, you can't listen to the diagnosis and the doctors at the beginning of a child's life to determine what that child's life is going to look like. We have no idea the potential of human existence until we're able to experience that and move through those journeys before we can tell. So I
Sure.
really think that that's amazing. What do you see now as far as like in your community, the transition from kind of that 22 adult autistic community into, the community, and they're no longer receiving services through the government? Do you feel like it is a responsibility for the private sector to take on those kinds of, projects and programs? What do you think about that in your community? What do you see being offered?
Yeah, I've always been the fan of that. I think every insurance company, should give those services and, provide services and take care of the costs and coverages for those individuals.
Yeah.
And I think that's been the one thing that, I've seen in my state. So Lieutenant Governor Brian Calley, so Brian is no longer Lieutenant Governor, but he served 8 years in the state of Michigan. So he got my career started. Different story.
Oh,
Different.
okay.
But so Brian got the legislation passed in our state to have insurance companies cover ABA therapy,
Wonderful.
speech therapy for individuals in the spectrum, and just seeing how much of a boom it is caused in our state in a good way,
Yeah.
um, to get the services and the accommodations provided for young individuals on the spectrum. And I have, I have twin nieces, my sister's kids. They were both diagnosed at a year and a half.
Mhm.
And so my sister at first, it was, and even me as their uncle, like part of me, it hit me hard because it's like, man, like both, not one, but both of my
Yeah.
nieces are diagnosed at the same age. But then after about spending 5 minutes feeling sorry for myself and sorry for them, I'm like, okay, time to go to work. Like, and so I called my sister. I said, here's who you need to contact. Here's who you need to contact. Here's who you need to look up. Look for these services at Michigan State. Go to so and so at University of Michigan, because I've worked in this field for so long. I met some incredible individuals
Yeah.
who work in ABA therapy, speech therapies, etc. So 20 years ago, we don't have that.
No?
We don't. 27 years ago, when I was 5 and I was told what I was told then, or what my parents were told,
Yeah.
there was no guidance. There was no path. There were no accommodations at that time.
Yeah.
So my parents, in a sense, were kind of flying blind, if you will. They didn't know
Pioneers is in their sense.
exactly.
Yeah.
So, but luckily, the late great Sandy McDonald, who at the time was the assistant head of special education in Okemos Public Schools, she was in that meeting. And after that meeting, she got together with my parents and said, because my dad told after they got to the third expert, my dad got up out of his seat, cut the person off, and said, "Look, like, I respect what you do. I understand what you're trying to do, but let me tell you what our expectations are for our son.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to go to high school. He's going to graduate. He's going to go to college. He's going to graduate. He doesn't have to be an athlete to do all this. If the good Lord wants to bless our son with those gifts, great, cool. But he doesn't have to be an athlete to do all do the things you're saying he can't." So my parents' expectations were up here. They were always high, never changed. But Sandy McDonald sat down with my parents, and the first thing she said was, "I don't know how, but we're going to find a way to get all this done."
Yeah.
And that's what happened. And so, 27 years ago, we don't have those services. There is no ABA. There is no speech therapist at the time. But now we have all that.
Yeah.
And I think that's the one thing that, some states, I don't say all states, but some states really don't look into.
Yeah.
And I think we're up to, I think maybe 43 states in the US that have that autism legislation bill that says, hey, all insurance companies had to provide and cover, these therapies for individuals on the spectrum.
Mm,
It should be all states.
agreed.
So that I've been a big advocate for that from day one.
Yeah.
And I think that's how it should be. And so, so I think all states need not to work together. They need to work together to make sure that they have these type of legislations for insurance companies to provide provide the
Yeah.
treatment therapies that not just the individuals, but the families of that individual with autism can get as well.
I love that you said that, because I think that that was one important part in our journey, especially. It was when a decade ago, like you said, it was, our son was getting services, but my husband and I didn't know what our part was. What do we need to
Right.
do? What's our
Right.
steps? And it was one wonderful therapist that came through and said, here's what you do. Here's your step. We want you to start with ready, set, go. And we want you to start engaging. He's like kind of like your niece is 1.5. We want you to start engaging and ready, set, go, and see if that brings him more into your world. And we would make it so exciting, running down the hall, in the grocery store, at the park, wherever we could do ready, set, go. And it did, and it started to create the introduction for us to understand that we could engage with him in
Right.
his world through his interests. And so, yeah, I advocate for that very, very strongly, that there shouldn't be punishments for children. No. There needs to be support for children. And I strangely enough had this thought today. I don't even think there should be punishment for adults. There should be rehabilitation. Yeah. And I mean, that some people might think that that's crazy or unheard of, but wouldn't that balance our society out? Wouldn't it make us a more compassionate, like, society in general to want those things?
Yeah, I think it would, because again, the one thing that I'm trying to strive for as an advocate now is acceptance.
Yeah.
Because, I don't want to say a majority, because there are some of those in the autism community that have said, no, I want more awareness and acceptance. And I respect that. I'm not going to tell somebody, hey, you need to think about this and that. That's not my business. Because if somebody has their opinions, I'm going to respect their opinion and I'm not going to fight back with it.
Yeah.
But I'm always going to keep it in the back of my head and go, hey, think about this a little more. Think about it. I'm not going to tell you what to do, but just think about it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like back in the day when my parents want me to try, something different, or they want me to try a different move in basketball. Hey, try this. No, mom and dad want to. Okay, if you don't try it now, but keep it in the back of your mind that you should try someday.
I like that.
Then I would try the move in a game and it works. And my dad would say to me in the car, hey, what'd I tell you?
Yeah.
You were right. I know. So,
they love that, don't they?
They do. And I'm the same way with my kids. Like,
yeah.
6-year-old something, no, dad, you're wrong. And then he looks it up and then he sees that he's wrong. He looks at me and just goes, okay, dad. Like, yeah, I told you. The one thing I'm trying to fight for is acceptance, because, it is time for society to realize that, hey, we're more than just a quote unquote label like you say we are. Because like the one criticism I get being on the spectrum is, again, you take one good look at me and you say to yourself after hearing me speak for 2 minutes, man, Anthony Ianni doesn't have autism. He doesn't have those characteristics. He doesn't have that kind of autism. I don't see it. I don't recognize it. There's no way. And I've always posed the question to people of, what is autism supposed to look like?
Yeah. Right?
Autism look like to you? And there's that old saying too. Once you've met a person with autism, you've met a person with autism.
Yep.
It doesn't matter where they're at on the spectrum.
Right.
Once you've met somebody on that spectrum, you've met them. And that's the one thing that, so whenever I speak at conferences, I ask that question all the time, halfway in my presentation. I never get offended by it. I never do, because I get it all the time. It's to the point where I laugh about it.
Yeah.
Like, man, like, you guys really thought that? And then I go into more detail. But even those who didn't raise their hand, they notice some quirks that I have right away. Like, if I mess something up, I'll say, I will go back and say, excuse me, and then continue forward. where they've noticed where other speakers, if they screw up, you know, they just keep going. They don't say, excuse me. They just keep going. And maybe that's because of the mannerisms I was taught growing up. I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's just one of the many quirks that people notice about me whenever I speak. But those who raise their hand, I'm like, you know, I'm not offended by it. But
Yeah.
I tell people all the time, have dinner with me, have lunch with me, have coffee or tea with me, and let's talk for 2 hours straight or whatever. And I guarantee you walk away from that conversation having a better understanding of me being on the spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
But that's what I'm trying to fight for today, is
Yeah.
to show society that, you know what, we're more than just a label. We're more than just, you know, being on the spectrum. Because the one thing I've always said about every single individual on the spectrum, they are all they all have unique and talented traits.
Yeah.
It does not matter where you're at on the spectrum. Because, you know, I guarantee you somebody listening or watching this will go, you know, well, what about the individuals on the low end of the spectrum? Like, they may not have that. On the contrary, though, my head coach and I had a conversation 9 years ago after I graduated. It was after I was hired by a nonprofit organization to do the anti-bullying initiative. And so when I coached us down and we start talking, and he goes, Anthony, like, you know, I got a next door neighbor who has a son with autism. He's very, very low on the spectrum. You know, he'll have to have help for the rest of his life. But you know what? The one thing I've always noticed about him, he's a fantastic painter. And his paintings are hung in the East Lansing Art Museum almost every single month. That's how great he is. And I immediately said to Coach, Coach, I said, that's the thing. I said, people don't give us a chance because they just look at it as a label. They
Yeah.
look
It's
at
horrible.
the spectrum and they give up on you because of where you're at in the spectrum. And
Yeah.
that's not fair. So if that young man has that talented trait, imagine the other talented traits that those individuals on the spectrum, especially at the lower end, have,
Yeah.
because you never know. And that's why I've always said, you know, especially when it comes to acceptance, it does not matter where we are at on the spectrum. It does not matter. It's time for you to start giving us the acceptance and the respect that we rightfully deserve.
Human, right?
Exactly. And it's the same thing whenever I go into schools, because especially in middle school, you know, because in my opinion, I think bullying always starts in middle school, because you're trying to get your feet wet. You're trying to find your place among, you know, the different groups in the crowds in middle school. There was one time I had a presentation and I had the principal say to me, hey, we have a young man on the spectrum. He may have some outbursts from time to time. Just want to give you a heads up. And I'm like, yeah, don't worry about it. I completely understand it. I get it, you know, because I'm on the spectrum. I've worked and been and seen different people on the spectrum. Like, it's not a big deal.
Yeah.
So that outburst in my presentation. And one thing I noticed was everybody in that audience did this. They looked toward him. So what did I do? I moved to my left on the stage so all those students can come back to me. And that's what happened. I moved to the left so they can keep their eyes on me. That's what happened. But again, some of those students don't understand.
Yeah.
They don't understand why they have the outbursts. Thus, the reason why there needs to be more awareness in the schools, so the younger generation, younger population can learn more about what autism is.
Absolutely.
You do that, then you gain more acceptance in the community. Because if we start teaching these younger students at a younger age about what autism is, what the different characteristics are, then 20 years later, when they're older adults, guess what?
Exactly.
Those on the spectrum, because they learned about it. They've been around individuals in their classrooms who are on the spectrum.
Yeah, exactly why I started and wrote children's books. DJ the Bear, a book about a bear with autism. I have 7 in my children's book collection, all about special needs. So
I love it.
And that's exactly where they belong, right in the hands of elementary school children who can read it, you know, read it with the general education kids, read it all together inclusively and learn about each other, support one another. You know, kids only face things with fear when they don't have knowledge. And if we provide them with the knowledge, there will be so much less fear and less bullying and things like that. So yeah, this is my baby, if you would, you know, kind of just to educate children about dyslexia, Down syndrome. There's so many, you know, anxiety. There's a lot of invisible challenges for people, and it's important that they are seen for their, you know, their greatness that they can be, and not the challenges that befall them in their daily lives.
Right. And I think that's the other reason why I really want to like write a kid's book, the more and more I
Yeah.
think about it every day, is because, whatever character I do, it's going to be based on a character who's going to be on the autism spectrum.
Yeah.
And I think one of the ideas I've come up with, and yes, I'm gonna share my ideas for my third project.
I love it.
One of the ideas I have is the individual himself is going to be on the spectrum, and it's basically his own adventures, if you will. So
Yeah.
his adventures in space as an astronaut, his adventures on the seven seas as a pirate, his adventure as a basketball commentator, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
So like you on the desk there, you have like multiple kids' books. Like that's where I'm trying to go with this. I'm trying to make it more than just a one and done
Yeah.
story. And
You
I
got
think
it.
like at the same time, not only will it talk about his strengths of being on the spectrum, but some of the weaknesses, but also talk about his problem solving too, because
Exactly.
those on the spectrum, including myself, we have different ways of solving problems. We have our own
Yes.
different ways of trying to figure things out. And so, but like you said, at the younger age, we hit the younger age early, especially from a kid's book perspective. It's going to show kids like, hey, this individual on the spectrum could be an astronaut one day. This
Mm-hmm.
individual, I don't know about a pirate, but he could sail in the seven seas.
Yeah.
He could have his own sailboat. He could drive his own yacht, like whatever you want to say.
Yeah.
This individual on the spectrum could be a college basketball commentator or an NBA commentator on TNT or ESPN, etc. The ideas are there because I want to show kids that, hey, you know what? Just because that person's on the spectrum doesn't mean they can't be great at something.
Yeah. Isn't that the truth? I think that's the best thing to celebrate. And I
Mm-hmm.
see it in every member of my family. I see their, unique talents that they bring not only to our
Yep.
family, but to the community and to the world. In fact, one of these books is published by my 8-year-old. She is 9 now, because she is such a great illustrator. And so I
Yep.
said,
There you go.
hey, let's illustrate your very own book. And
Look at that.
we have it out. And so now she can carry that within her life and in her repertoire and say, I've published a children's book when I was 8 years old. And the
There you go.
confidence, that can give to her.
Yes.
And
Yes.
yeah. And you met my son, and he has his own talents in
For sure.
in education. He has a photographic memory. So with him, we just keep on, we
I
just
know
make
all about
sure
that.
to stay on top of every language. So, he told us just the other day that he has now, he's 11, he's memorized 109 languages. He said he as many as Google Translate knows is where he's at.
Wow. It's funny you bring up the photographic memory type of deal. My roommate Mike at Grand Valley State, like we were just going through. So like he knew I was on the spectrum because I kind of told him before our freshman year. So and he would like help accommodate me and whatever.
That's great.
So our sophomore year, we were just sitting in our apartment, and he goes, "Hey, what's the most random thing you can ever remember in your life?" I said, "You really want to know?" He goes, "Yeah." I was like, "All right, my sixth grade basketball stats." I was like, "Wait, what? Like you?" He's like, "How many games did you play?" So I played in 6. All right. How many points did you score in all of them? And I go 12, 14, 16, 33, 24, 12. And he was just like, it's like, how do you remember that? That was like almost 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Like, how do you remember all that? And I always say to him, I say, hey, it's the autistic brain, man. Like I remember
Exactly.
the list things. Like if you were to ask me who won the 1939 national championship in basketball, the Oregon Ducks.
Woo! I used to live in Oregon. Go Ducks!
There you go. Who won 1941? Well, Wisconsin. That's easy. And everybody would just be like how do you know all
I
that?
love that.
You'll love this one. Last one. So my wife, again, big Detroit Tigers fan. She'll text me, "Hey, what channel is the Tigers game on?" And we have Spectrum. I said it's channel 232. She turns to 232. She's like, "How do you know that?" I was like, "I just do. Don't ask me why. Don't ask me. I just do.
I love it. My husband has the unique ability to recall conversations. It's
Hmm.
scary and good, right?
Yep,
Because you're like,
exactly.
hey, I don't want to talk about that. That was 10 years ago. No, just kidding. But yeah, it's great because, you know, he can never be caught off guard that way in conversations
Hmm.
because he's like, no, 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 no. I remember exactly how this conversation went. And it's so funny
Exactly.
to know that, you know, and to all of the talents, right? Oh my gosh, it has been such a pleasure to talk to you today. I just want to keep going, but unfortunately, right, it is my show. I guess I could make it a 3-hour show, but that's okay. But I would love to get back in touch with you in the future and do this again
For
and
sure.
follow up, you know, maybe in September before the book comes out, do another show and promote the book some more. Tell me the name of the book again.
So
Centered.
my the title of my yep, centered autism basketball and one athlete stream.
Fantastic. And if people want to find out more about you or anything, do you have a website that you hold?
Yes. Yes. So I have two of them. The first one is my personal website, which is anthonyianni.com. And then my other one is relentlesstour.com, which is for those who are interested in bringing me in and our Department of Civil Rights bringing us in and having me do anti-bullying presentations in their school. So,
Love that.
and who knows, if you know anybody in the school district of Salt Lake City, you know, they want to bring me out this year, I'd be more than happy to make that trip.
I
And
do.
I got a couple people out there. One of them is a former high school teammate of mine. He's the assistant strength and conditioning coach for the Utah Jazz.
Oh, I
Uh,
used to be their massage therapist.
really?
Yeah, I didn't tell you
That's
that part.
awesome.
Yeah, right? Isn't that funny?
I love it.
It was a lot
So,
of fun. And in fact, you know, I personally just have never known basketball or been a basketball fan personally, but just because I'm 5'2". So, you know, basketball just never made sense for me. But yeah, I think that it was so much fun because I didn't have fandom, if you will, and I just was there to help them and to
right.
get them back to their best athlete that they could be. So yeah, that was a really fun time.
Well,
Definitely.
they're doing pretty good right now. So I'm cheering hard for them, not just because my buddy, you know, is the assistant strength and conditioning coach, but I got a relationship with Joe Ingles, who's on the team.
Oh yeah,
You know,
definitely. You know, that's so funny you said that because my neighbor a couple doors down, her son is a sports commentator. In Utah, and Anthony Parks is I think his name, and
okay,
I gave him one of these DJ the Bear books to
okay.
give to Joe. And I never heard anything. I tried to tweet him and say, hey, did you ever get that? I never heard anything. So maybe you could pass the message on
Oh,
and
I'll
say,
definitely do that.
hey, this lady tried sending you her book because he has a son on the spectrum as well.
Yes,
Right.
yes, and that's how, you know, Joe and I met through. You know, we haven't met face to face yet. You know, we're still trying to work on that, but
That's great.
that's kind of how he and I met, was through social media, because NBA and Turner did had a have a TV show called Beyond the Paint, and they
Mm.
came out 2 years ago and interviewed me and did, like, you know, like a 10-15 minute mini documentary on the show about me. And so right after that, you know, I think Joe's son was diagnosed not too long before that.
Mm.
And then Joe saw the segment and reached out to me, and we stayed in touch ever since.
Oh, that's so
And
great.
he tried to call me one time on my buddy's phone, but it was during the Michigan State Duke game like 2 years ago, after we had beat Duke, and I was with a bunch of buddies of mine, and we were going nuts because Duke was the heavy favorite to win it all that year. And then all of a sudden, I get this phone call. You know, there was a missed call from my buddy. He texted me. He said, "Hey, Joe was trying to call you, but we'll try to get in touch with you another time." I was like, "What? You could have told me that, and I could have walked out of my buddy's taking the phone call instead of celebrating the win." But it's just been great. You know, getting to know him, getting to know his family, and like I said, I hope I get the chance, you know, to meet all of them face to face, and
Yeah.
gets to see his son too.
Come to Utah. I'd love to meet
Absolutely.
up with you and visit. Yeah, absolutely. That'd be great. Well, I was thinking, I might even put you in touch with somebody in Oregon that does, she has an anti-bullying program. She did,
Oh, okay.
was like in the 90s where she was doing like online cyberbullying when it
Oh,
was
wow.
hardly even a thing. So she
Right.
does like, she has donkeys and she does donkey therapy.
Really
Yeah. Have you ever heard of
interesting.
such a thing?
I've never heard of donkey therapy in my life.
She said that they're so human-like in their behaviors that they get into groups and there's like a sensitive one and a bully and they get ousted and things. And so she said it's a really great therapy for kids to kind of watch them and learn how the social behaviors kind of are connected.
That's interesting.
Isn't
That's
that
really
cool?
interesting.
Such a different, unique perspective. So
It
yeah,
is.
definitely. I'll have to put you in. She was like, I think my second interview. So if you go back on the SG Child Show, you could check that out too.
I plan to.
That was funny. I'm so glad I remembered that. It was such a pleasure to talk to you today and to get to know you. And I look forward to staying in contact with you and, checking in to see how your family's growing and all your projects. So thank you so much for your time today, Anthony.
No, thank you so much for having me. And like you said, I look forward to staying in touch with you as well.
Yeah, definitely. Have a great weekend and we'll talk soon.
Sounds good. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.